So welcome everyone. In this workshop we're going to be going through backups and seed phrases and how to do a backup and restore on different types of nodes. So I'm Jazmin, I'm part of the community team. I'm helping to test Minima during that and feeding back all the great feedback that you guys have to our developers. And I think Luke's also on the call, and then Barry and Mia might join us a bit later. So I'm going to go through how to make a backup on a local node. So if you're running it manually on Windows or Mac or Linux, so that would just be running java-jar without using any scripts or without using Docker. And then I'll go through Docker, how to do it through the Docker interface on the desktop, and then so it's quite a lot to get through, and hopefully we'll get through it all. So if at any point you have any questions, just throw them in the chat, and I should be able to see those. So I'm going to start with just a simple manual node. So this would be, I'll just bring up the docs here. So we've got Android, obviously the most popular way to run a Minima node. And then we've got a Linux server and Windows, Mac, and Linux desktop. And these are all using Docker. And then we've got a manual method on the desktop. So this is the one I'm going to go through first. And it's just running java-jar through the command line on your computer. So here, I've just got it running in my local command window. And this is running on port 7001. So MDS is accessed through 7003, and I need to get MDS password, which I can use by running the MDS command. So hopefully all of you understand how to get this far. If you do have trouble setting up a node, then just please ask us in the support channel. And here's my password to log in. So now I can actually either do this through this command window here, or I can use the terminal mini DApp. So you can see I've got a few different versions here. Yeah. So I think one thing to understand about Minima is that it's a bit different to say ETH or Bitcoin for that matter, and that if you take Ethereum and MetaMask, all you need is your seed phrase in order to restore your node. So as long as you've written down what your seed phrase is and you're storing that somewhere safe, you can go and create a wallet. You just put your seed phrase in, and then you have access to your private keys again, and so you can see all of your coins on chain. However, with Minima, we do have a seed phrase, but we also need to have backups, and the backups are for storing the proofs to your coins. So with Minima, you can think of it like a book, and everybody holds their page in that book, which stores all of your own coins. And that way we help to keep the database small that you have to store on your phone. But in order for everyone to validate that no one's trying to double spend, we all have to keep the same spine of the book. And the spine of the book is changed every block because we're having new coins being created and coins being spent. So the backup is essentially to store the proofs for your coins and to keep your page and the spine. And so it's quite important that you take regular backup because, as I said, the spine is changing as new blocks are created. So you need to make sure that you have a recent backup within 1 or 2 months, so that if you do need to restore, you have recent proofs for your own coins. If you don't have a backup, there will be an option to do an archive resync where you can sync to an archive node which will store all of the coins from the history of the chain. So that would be a kind of fallback option, but ideally you would make sure that you have a backup of your node that's a recent backup. So through the terminal, the command line interface, we can do backup. And if I just do a backup like that, it's going to put it into the default location. And so for this particular node that's running locally on my machine, you can see that it's just created this backup file here. And I can go find that. Desktop. Okay, so you can see that's just created a backup here on my desktop. And it's important to note that because I haven't given it a file name, it's just put a default file name and it hasn't given it a password either. So anyone would be able to take this backup and restore it without having a password. So what you want to be doing is backup and then file. And here I can give it a name. So workshop windows.back. And when you give it a name, you need to give it this .back extension. And then I can set a password. Okay. And I can see that it's created another backup, but it's now password enabled and it's using my name. I can also tell it where I want it to store it if I don't want it to use this location. So because this is just local, I could do backup file and then give it a file path that I want it to use. And then, so that's the folder, no backups that I want to use it. And then workshop, Windows 2.back, password, again, same thing. Okay. And so now you see I've got this other folder, so I'm storing it in this node backups folder and my backup file is there. So that's one way to use the backup command. To enable automatic backups, you can just do backup auto true. And that will then create a default backup and that will run every 24 hours and that will go into my default location. So currently for the auto backups, you don't specify a name, you can't specify a name or a password. So these are just default backups taken once every 24 hours. One thing I should have mentioned is that before you take a backup, you should always check that you're on the latest block. So if you run status, you should always check here the block and the times. So you can see here that my latest block is 280023 and the time is 1514 GMT, and you can see that that is very close to what my clock says here. So it looks like I'm up to date with the chain. If you're not on the right chain, you'll need to restart your node, and then it should resync automatically to the latest block. If you're not on the latest block, you're going to have trouble with backups and restore. So it's quite important to make sure that you're up to date before you try to back up. So Joshua, yeah. Try a different browser, Joshua. So I've got backup now for this node, and let's just have a little look at what we've got in the wallet here. So this has got some coins from quite a while ago. So some of these are now deprecated with the new version of the wallet, but you can see that I have some balance here. So these are the coins that will have been backed up when I just took my backup there. So what I'm going to do now is I have a second node. So this is on 7003. Just started a new node here. And this is running on port 9121. So I'm going to connect to that MDS. So MDS is the Minidap server. So HTTPS 127.0.0.1.9.1.2.3. So whatever your node is started on, so you see I started this node on port 9121. The Minidap server will always be +2. So that's why I'm using 9123 here. And again, I need to get my password. So here, MDS. Okay, so on this node, you can see I don't have all of those other mini dApps. I've got the terminal though. And let's actually install the wallet. So if I go to mini dApps, I'm going to get the latest wallet here and install that. Okay, so that's downloaded. Going back to my hub. Find the wallets in my downloads folder. Install. Back to the main menu. Okay, so we can see I don't have any Minima here yet. So I'm going to restore the backup that I've just taken from this node. So if we go to terminal, so you'll notice here, this is actually a new interface. So I'll just spend a minute going over this. You'll notice now that we have our mini dApps as usual, but we also have read, write, delete. So obviously delete will delete this mini dApp. Read and write, all mini dApps will be installed with read access as default. And this means that they can't spend your funds without creating a pending transaction. So if I tried to send a transaction, I would have to come here and it would come up with a pending transaction that says, this mini dApp is trying to spend 10 Minima. Do you approve it or do you want to deny it? And so you would accept or deny that here. So this is actually an old one. I'm going to just deny this. And so the terminal is actually the only one that you would ever want to set as write. So I'm just going to change this permission from read to write. So are you sure this Minidap will be able to send funds without triggering a pending request? Only do this if you trust the Minidap. So obviously, as we go into mainnet, you might come across Minidaps that are just kind of being sent around. And if you install a malicious Minidap, then it could potentially trigger, it might try to send funds from your wallet without you knowing. So it's really important that you don't just set all your Minidaps to write. So only do it for the ones that you really know are legitimate. For example, if you're downloading it from our website. Okay. So now to restore, and something that's also quite handy here is if you do help, you'll see all of the commands. But actually, if you do help command and then choose a specific one, so restore, you'll actually get some more detail there for that specific command. So I'm going to restore file, and I'm going to pick this one that I've just created here. And then the name is workshop. Workshop and those two dot back. And then the password was.
Hello, darling. Sorry, I'm now recording the goddamn backup due to workshop, and then I've
Hi, Barry.
Am I talking now? Sorry.
Okay. Okay, so you can see that it's restoring it, and it says restart Minima for restore to take effect. So I'm just going to close down this terminal here and MDS. So if I refresh this, it's down, and I have to come back up here. Let's see. Okay, so I can see that's now synced up to the chain, and it's just syncing. Should be able to access MDS again. Okay, password. Okay, so now you can see that this has restored the coins that I had on my previous node. So if we go back onto my 703 node, we've now got an exact copy of my coins in this node here. So that should be them.
And just to add, it's not restoring the coins per se, it's restoring the entire node with all the private keys, etc.
Yeah, so the private keys, but it doesn't restore, so you'll notice that it didn't take my mini dApps from this node. So I have different mini dApps on this one to this one here, but it restores all of your private keys. I see Ivan in case of auto backup. What about the old backups? So will outdated versions be automatically deleted? So No. So if you're running it locally like this, you'll have a new backup every day, and the old ones won't get overwritten. It's slightly different if you use the Google Drive backups that we have in the APK, and that will overwrite each day. But I think Google actually stores the last 7 days, maybe it's 30 days. So you'll be able to go back, I think, for 30 days on Google. Is the restoration an exact copy as the original in terms of public keys and wallet addresses as well as private keys? Yes. Yeah, exactly. So it's restoring all of your private keys, all of your private keys have an associated public key and an associated wallet address. So that's actually quite an interesting detail as well, because say if I do keys on this node, you'll actually see here, these are all my keys. And in Minima, you have default 64 public keys. So you're going to have 64 default private public keys and wallet addresses, which is why when you go into the wallet, some of you may have noticed that when you click on receive, you get a new address each time. So this one ends in D3, DV0. When I come back, it's changed. So they're all valid. So anyone can send me money to this address and it will get to me, because you have 64 default ones, and a random one is just selected whenever I come to this page. The mini dApps, no, they're not restored.
And nor are your contacts for Maxima either. It's just the base layer Minima that's restored.
That's true, yeah. Can I cancel an address to avoid people spamming me unwanted NFTs? No. You can't. Okay, so that was just going through the manual node. So I'm actually going to quit these now because I've got quite a few nodes running on this computer. So quit that, stop that one running. Now I'm going to close these ones down and move on to Docker. Unless anyone has any more questions with that. Okay. Docker. So I'm going to be running through the desktop interface. It's similar for servers. We'll probably do another one of these backup workshops just because they're quite important. And as we get to mainnet, a few things might change, like there might be slight tweaks to the process. So we'll probably do another session as well. But you can see here, I've got my Minima node running, and I've got my watchtower, which is looking for updates. So whenever there's a new version of Minima, the watchtower is going to keep my node updated. If I click on this node, you can see the logs running here. And if I go to terminal and type Minima, enter, I can actually interact with my node this way. So before I take a backup, I'm going to run status and see where I am. So block 280046 time 1528, and that's pretty close to where I am now, so that looks fine. And so I could, in the same way, just do a backup directly within the terminal here. But let's just have a quick look at the node itself. choose 7. This one's actually running on port 8003, as you can see here. And with Docker, the password is as you set it up when you run the initial command. So this is what I ran to start it. Could this be out for us when someone has an address they can send me stuff, no mail booking? I mean, it's the same on any chain, right? So Ethereum, if someone has your Ethereum address, they can just send you anything, really. Yeah, I think
we saw that after the Tornado Cash OFAC indictment. People were being dusted with tiny amounts of Ethereum, like public figures were getting sent tiny amounts of Ethereum that had touched Tornado Cash, just to sort of infect and show how ridiculous the compliance was.
Yeah. Another question, is it possible that 2 or more nodes will be restored at the same time from the same backup? Turns out that several identical nodes will work the same way with the same set of addresses. Yes. So you could...
For the initial backup, when you restore the same node to several machines, immediately they are identical, but then they will become asynchronous as if you send money from one, it will send it from the others, but it will return it to a different wallet address that you might not have visibility to. So that's not a way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, they should stay in sync, but they will be 2 separate nodes because they'll be running on different IPs. So they'll potentially have different connections. So, yeah. Okay, so carrying on here. Opening the terminal again. So if I just do backup, simple backup. Okay, so now we see that this path was different to mine. It doesn't say C uses Jazz. It's just got this home Minima data. And this is because this is the data folder in the Docker node. So when you create a node on Docker, you might have noticed that we have this mapping. So this section here is actually mapping my folder in my C drive to the home Minima data folder on Docker. So even though here, here you see home Minima data, that will actually map to my local folder, which I can get access to here. So here we go. So despite it saying home Minima data, because I've mapped that Docker folder onto my Minima Docker 8001 folder, this is where the backups will appear for you locally. So now if I run the same thing, but I give it a file name and a password, so workshop docker.back, don't forget the back file extension, password, workshop, enter. Okay, so now you see given it a name, and I now have a backup here. So let's have a quick look at what we've got. So obviously you can also do any other commands here. So if I type balance, I can see my balance here, but obviously it's nicer to have a look through the wallet. So let's see. So I've got 64 Minima, and then I've created some NFTs and custom tokens. So, okay, so let's start another node and restore it. So I've just got 8001. Let's start another node. Here's one I made earlier. So Docker run. Then I've got a new folder. So Docker 5001 new. Let me just check that I haven't. Oh, it's already. Okay. So now I've got a new node. Just give it some time to start up. I'm actually going to also upload this backup to my Google Drive so that I can also attempt to restore this on a phone. Okay, so I've also just uploaded it into my Google Drive here, so we'll access that later on. Let's see how we're doing. Okay, so let's go to our Minima hub on this. So I started this on 5001. So to access my MDS hub, I'm going to go to 27.0.0.1:5003. I can proceed here. Do we have a clean node, hopefully? Okay, so no Minima here. Now, the way to do this with Docker is that, and I'd mentioned that you set up a mapping. So this Minima Docker 8001 is being mapped to my 8001 Docker node. So I'm also going to have a different folder here for my 5001 node, which I've just created. Here it is. And if I want to be able to restore a backup to this node, I need the backup file to be in this folder because that's where Docker has access to. So I'm actually going to copy this into my 5001 node. And now, actually I can just show you how it looks if I try and do it without. So if I try and restore file, what's it, workshop. Also a workshop. So it's going to say restore file doesn't exist. So you can see it's looking in home Minima data. So that corresponds to this Minima Docker 5001 new folder. So if I now put that backup in this folder, and I repeat the same thing, restore file workshop docker dot back, password. Okay. Thinking. Okay, so it's restarted itself. So you can see now in the logs, it stopped and restarted. So now if I go back to my MDS, I'm going to have to come out of this and come back in. .0.1.5003. Okay, so now you can see that my coins have been restored. So I've now got a copy from my 8003 node onto my 5003 node. Just checking. Okay. Due to coming loss of privacy, even on stable coins, has Minima any option to do a stable coin? Yeah, I mean, potentially. Would you keep starting new nodes on the same computer, or is it intended purpose to move your node to a new device? Yeah, so exactly. So this is I'm just demonstrating here how to back up and restore, but you probably wouldn't do it exactly like this. So the idea would be that you're backing up your node, and then if you lose access to this, if I lost access to my 8003 node, I could always go to my backup and then start up a new node, wherever that is, and then just use that backup file to restore my coins. So, for example, if I was taking backups from my phone automatically and then I lost my phone, I could just get the backups that I'd taken, provided obviously they're not stored on my phone, and then restore it to my laptop, for example, and vice versa.
And I think it's worth mentioning that obviously we're on testnet and we're incentivizing people to run and maintain their nodes with the IC program. So we've kind of developed a bit of a culture of individuals running multiple nodes, obviously for friends and family or to collect extra rewards. I mean, ultimately, when we're on mainnet, the idea is that, you have one node per box, maybe two at most. There's no real advantage in running multiple nodes on the same box. Apart from perhaps to save some resources if you were, again, supporting friends and family. So, one node per person is really the mindset to get in.
Yeah. But the key is you have to make the backup and store it somewhere else. Yes, exactly. That is, you have to store it somewhere else and somewhere secure. So just whilst I've got this Docker node up, another command I'll show you is vault. So if I do help, help command vault. So this is actually how you see your seed phrase and your passphrase. So if I do the vault command, it's going to show me my phrase, so my 24-word phrase and my seed. So these should also be kept safe and not, online, so that if you fail to have a backup, then these will be used to sync from an archive node. I won't have time to demonstrate the resync from an archive node today, but we'll go through that in a separate session. And essentially, you can use Vault to lock your node. So using your seed phrase, you can lock your node, which means that all of your private keys will be wiped. And then you can unlock your node using your passphrase. So
effectively, a vaulted
yeah.
wallet becomes a hardware device, effectively, that you can't transact on unless you re-input the seed or the passphrase.
Yeah. Is the archive node already real? Yes, it is. We're still kind of testing it internally. So we haven't got any archive nodes that we can give to the public yet. But yeah, it is a thing, and it will be built into Minima. So just like when you start Minima with these different parameters. So if I show you, for example, this here is what I use to start a simple manual node. And we have these different parameters. For example, MDS enable allows you to use MDS, and to run an archive node, it will simply be like -archive included there. So, and then when you want to resync from an archive node, you'll need to know the IP address of one of those archive nodes. And when you restore, you'll just put in your seed phrase and an IP, and then it will resync. So where am I now? So I've done the restore in Docker. And so let's just see if I can get my phone up to show you. Hey, it's working. Oh, just install Minima here. So I've got 0 in my wallet. So if we go to home and backup restore, I'll just quickly explain this page. So make a backup. This is just a one-time backup. And here you'll set the password that you want to use. And so that's just like when we did here. That's like running backup and then giving it a password essentially. And then when you do this, okay, so let's just run through. Make a backup, choose password, workshop. Okay. And then I can choose where I want to save that. I can save it to my drive, I can send it to Discord, don't know why you shouldn't really do that, or share it however you want to. One thing that I've actually noticed is that if you try and save it to your drive, here you need to have the .back extension that I talked about earlier. So just double check that's there. That's something that we'll look to get fixed in the next version, but just something to be aware of, and then you can choose the folder that it goes into.
I think it's also worth noting that you must remember the password that you set when encrypting your backup. If you don't remember it, you won't be able to restore.
Restore from a backup we'll do in a moment. The archive node, this is how you would resync from an archive node. If I go to the eye icon here, and so when I resync, I would have to with an archive node, there's two things you can do. If you're behind on the chain, you can simply resync to an archive node without putting your seed phrase in, and it will just kind of catch you up to the chain. But if you completely need to restore from scratch, then you would need to input your seed phrase as well. But as I say, we'll come on to that in another workshop. Those Google Drive backups, you can sign into Google, and that will take automatic backups every 24 hours to your Google Drive. And restore from a backup. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can restore from the Docker backup that I just took. So I've put it into my Google Drive. Let's just wait for this to refresh. Workshop Docker backup. So this is the one. And now it should shut down. Okay, stopped. And now when you restart Minima, it's quite important that you wait for it to finish syncing. So you'll see it pop up at the top in a second. So I'm just going to wait for this to resync, and then we can see our backup. So let's just check questions. And the archive node will be Minima run. Anyone would be able to run an archive node. So yeah, we will be running some.
Obviously, if you're running an archive node as an individual, you have to make sure you have enough hard drive storage for the full unpruned database. Currently, we estimate probably about 100 megabytes per month unpruned, but it's a bit of an unknown quantity. Not very big, but certainly enough to consider not running it on a phone.
Yeah, are the seed and seed phrase directly related to one another? Is the seed the hash of the phrase, for example, or misunderstood? Good question. I'll go and check that.
I think it's a BIP39 format.
Yeah. No, it's saying is the seed the hash of the phrase. I'll check that and come back to you. Okay, so I can see, show up my phone here, that it's caught up. So yeah, so about 15. So I'm 2 hours ahead here, so it's a little bit different to the Docker nodes. So now I'm actually going to have to reboot my phone quickly. Lewis says, if we wanted to vault our node, how often does it need to go online? Or could it stay offline for years and keep the coin safe? So
the vaulted node is online. It's just online without the private keys. That's the whole point.
Yeah. So basically you could, if you wipe the private keys, you could receive, but you couldn't send. So because you wouldn't be able to sign anything without the private keys, so you wouldn't be able to send any any Minima from your node. So it's basically just a way to secure your node. If you want to go offline for years, then you would need to, but you'd need a recent backup if you wanted to resync, if you wanted to use a backup. What's the incentive to run an archive node? Payments, presumably. Yeah, I mean, in the future, you'll probably have to pay if you want to resync from an archive node. So it could be a service that people pay for. Okay, so I'm just restarting my phone here. I'm waiting for that to sync up. So it's also worth noting that obviously so far, like as Barry alluded to, you haven't need to have been taking backups because the incentive rewards are not kind of stored on your node. We kind of keep those separate to the network because we've been updating quite a lot. So once we hit mainnet and you do get your sent to you, those will be coins in your wallet. And so to keep those safe, you will need to be backing up your node. We won't be able to, resend coins that people lose because they don't have a backup. So it's quite important that you make sure that you take care of your coins once your incentive rewards have been sent to you. Any more questions so far?
You need to show us your wallet with the coins backed up.
Yep. I think it just needs to resync. Seems like it's still a few minutes behind, so I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes to finish syncing. If I keep my seed phrase, I can always get my node and coins back. Only from an archive node if you don't have a backup. Yeah, but yes, nicer to have your own backup. Then you don't have to rely on an archive node. Yeah. Can you choose which nodes you archive? Like, could you just archive for a small group of friends, or would an archive node be for the entire network? Good question. So someone can only use your archive node if you give them the IP of your archive node. So you could just be running it for yourself and then use that for your small group of friends and family. Otherwise no one would know that you have an archive node.
But the archive is a full, complete record of the database from Genesis.
Yeah. How does archive node have my private keys as well? No, it doesn't. That's why you would have to put in your seed phrase when you restore from an archive node.
Your seed phrase is essentially your private key in readable format.
This node is a little bit behind. Can I change my seed phrase if compromised? So your backup contains all of your private keys, so you would have to transfer it to a new node. I mean, yeah, so basically don't get it compromised. It's just like if you gave someone your Bitcoin seed phrase, it's a race, right, to get it off that node. Will there be a video guide about mnemonic? Yeah, so this is all being recorded and we'll put it up on YouTube. This backup on my phone is just taking a while to sync up. If my password in installation of the node on Docker has been compromised, can I change it? Yeah. So with Docker, you would just stop the container and delete the container, and then you'd restart it again. So just like I ran this to start my container, you would just run this again, change the password, and it would use the same data folder. So you'd still have your coins, but that would just be changing the MDS password. Hopefully that answers that question. But no, you wouldn't lose your wallet. So this folder here is where everything is stored. So if I have a little look here, this Minima folder is basically what's backed up. But when you restart, if I stop and remove the container, it doesn't delete this folder. So I can just start a new container, but use the same folder. And if I use the same folder, it's just going to reuse that folder that's still existing. And so that is what stores, your private keys and everything. So yeah. Okay, this is taking a little while to resync, but I think we've gone over an hour, so we'll come back to this in the next workshop, and then once we've kind of got all of the archive nodes action ready, then we'll also present that to you. So thanks everyone for joining. I think we covered all of the questions there, but yeah, so we'll put this up on YouTube for you to come back to, And so I think we'll leave it there for today, unless, Barry, you wanted to add anything else? Nope. Okay. So yeah, we'll be having another workshop session next week. So we'll keep you posted in the announcements. Thank you so much.